Hello there everybody, Sam Strains here and welcome back to another servicing video. This one is on how to service the Ringfield motor, which can be found in most of the older Hornby tender driven locos and I suppose nearly all of the diesels as well from a certain period. Now this one is by popular request because I've had quite a few people now ask me to do this video because there's been a lot of cases of these motors running hot or burning out, smoking and cutting out completely. So I just thought I'd share a few tips of mine that will allow you to service these motors properly to stop them burning out and make them last a little bit longer. So I realise there's quite a lot of these sorts of videos out there already, with various tips on how to service these. Mine is just my way of doing things. I'm not saying it's necessarily the best way of doing it, but it's certainly the way I do it, and I can say from my experience it works pretty well. So I'm going to show you what you're going to need, just because I think that makes things easier. You need some sort of cleaning fluid. I use lighter fluid and nail polish remover, just whichever I feel like. This one is a little stronger, so if you really want a damn good clean, lighter fluid is what you need to use. You're going to want some lubricant. You can use this or you can use some sort of silicone grease or something like that, which is better for plastics. You're going to want your your screwdrivers, your little screwdriver kit or anything like that. This one's essential. This is the sort of flat-ended one, if you like. I forget the technical term for it. You're going to want your cotton buds. You want plenty of those. You want quite an abundance of those. And you also want some tweezers, which is optional, but I find that they're very useful. And you might also need a needle, which is also optional but not entirely necessary. Of course, the last thing you need is the loco in question, which contains a Ringfield motor. And I'm going to get this body off now, and then I'm going to show you how you go about getting the motors out, which is quite a hot topic I've seen from the people that have asked me. So I'm just going to clear all this stuff out of the way, get the body off, and then I'll show you how we get it out. Okay, so there she is, topless if you like. You can now see the motor obviously quite clearly. The first thing then, as I said before, that you need to do is obviously get her out, and a lot of you are going to know how to do this. The first step is very easy. First you just take all these various connections out, and then you just flick this pin back here, push it through, and then the whole thing should come loose. There may be more wires than that if you've got two pickups on each side. There may be one just here, but in this case there wasn't. Now the potentially tricky part, I suppose, then, is getting the motor out of this sort of undercarriage assembly. And all you're going to need with this is just your little flatbed screwdriver. And all you want to do is jam it in here, and I'm just going to secure this on the other side, and then gently prise the motor out, like that. And obviously you want to put this to one side. A note on that, you need to be careful with this thing because if it bends or misshapes, it's going to look a bit weird without it, and obviously you can't really use it without it. So yeah, you've got to be careful with that. Let's put that to one side. Right, so the first thing I tend to do is to deal with the various gears and whatnot. Now, one of the reasons for the burnouts I've found is dirty gears and debris on the gears, which can cause a lot of resistance and put the motor through some unnecessary stress. So what I actually do now is I always take the gears out and clean them properly and then lubricate them properly and put them back in. All you do then is you unpin these parts, so you pull these out with your nails if you want to, and then just pull it downwards and it comes out very easily. Obviously put that to one side, and you can put it down the way it went in if you want to, which will help you to remember the way it goes back, but I've never had a problem with that before. Okay, and then you just simply remove the gears one by one, and you can put them down in this sort of formation. I'll show you the formation if you want. Get those out. You can put them down in this sort of formation, which will help you to remember which formation they go back in. It doesn't actually matter, but if you just for peace of mind, if you want to do that, you can do. Okay, so now the motor is quite bare. You can see, even with this example, which gets serviced quite regularly, there are a couple of hairs in the way there, which I like to use the tweezers to remove. So you just get rid of all that hair. Now, a good place for hair to accumulate, I find, is around these sort of nibs where the gears sit. You want to make sure they're extremely clean. So once you're happy that there isn't any hair left on the chassis, I suppose you could call it, I take a dry cotton bud, or you could wet it if you want to, and just give the thing a little clean everywhere. You can wet the cotton bud later if you want to, but then you've got to dry it all, and I find that this does the job. just nicely, and as you can see, it is pretty filthy already. And yeah, you just need to clean it up really. Make sure there's no residual hair or debris or anything, especially where the gears will sit. And that's very important. I also like to clear the gears up as well then. Now you're going to want to be very careful about what sorts of fluids you put onto these gears to clean them. You don't really want to put the lighter fluid onto them because it's going to eat them away, well, potentially. So I find that a dry cotton bud is often just fine. You need to clean out the centres of the gears really. That's the essential part. You want to make sure that there's no debris on them at all. And you do that with all of them. Make sure they're all good and clean. Mine are all pretty clean, as you can see, but they do get very grubby very quickly. So it's worthwhile just cleaning them and making sure, the number one, that there's no eyelashes or hairs on them. Okay, back to the motor then. So once you're happy that this side is good and clean and there's no hair or even fluff from the cotton buds in this case all over the motor, you can flip her around and deal with the other side, which is slightly more complicated, but only slightly. Now you're going to want to take the brushes out for this part, which you can do by just unscrewing these two screws. And actually you can see I've had to use a replacement screw in this side, so I'm going to have to use my other screwdriver for that. But this is best done with the motor lying down, so I'm going to adjust the camera and do it like that. Okay? Okay, so I'm going to do my best to obstruct the view as little as possible, but what you are going to want to do before you start unscrewing these is to secure this piece of copper in place before you start unscrewing, because there's a spring under here, if you don't know that already, which will boing out if you're not careful and you'll lose it. So I hold that in place and start unscrewing. Now this one in particular, you don't have to unscrew very much, but I'll take it out all the way just for the hell of it. There we go. And now of course when we release this, you'll see the spring pushes it out, and I'll just take the spring out, and if you're lucky the brush will be stuck to the spring. Oh yeah, that one is, but that isn't always the case. If the brush stays inside there, you're best just to leave it there until you take this face off, and then you can rescue it. But just remember it's there because they're very small, as you can see. They're very, very small, and if you lose them on the carpet or anywhere like that, it's very difficult to find them again, trust me. I've done it a few times. So yeah, look after those. And it might be worth also buying a few spares of these on eBay, because the springs sometimes do get a bit nasty and the brushes obviously wear away, and they're quite inexpensive for how long they last. Okay, I'm just going to go and grab my other screwdriver then for that other screw. Okay, so it's very much the same process. I'm going to secure the copper in place and unscrew. Like that. Make sure the screw comes out. Oh, that one came out by itself, that was kind. Remember which side they went in, it doesn't really matter, but I like to put things together exactly the way they came apart. And again, let's take the spring out. The brush didn't stay on that time, which is quite good because it demonstrates it, I suppose. But again, we'll put the spring to one side just for safekeeping. Now what you can try, if you want the brush to come out, which I suppose we do really, is just shake it on its back like that and it's come out. A lot of the time it won't be as good as that, it won't come out that well, but you know, I got lucky. But if not, again, you can just leave it in there until you take it off. Okay, so we're now ready to complete the final step to dismantling this motor. So I'll take the flat-ended screwdriver once again and secure the motor. Hopefully I'm not going to obstruct the view too much. And you've got to gently prise this face off. Let me try and do this. I'm trying not to, I'm getting... There we go. Now some of the models that you have, the wheels here will stop that face from coming off. And if that's the case, you can take the wheels off, but I find that to be a bit of a pain and it's a bit risky as well. So I try to just do this next step without taking the face off, but if you can take it off, it's always best. So there's the commutator anyway, and as you can see, it's a little bit grubby. It won't be as grubby as some, but because I serviced it quite regularly, and this one's, you know, only been done 6 months ago or something like that, but some of them are very, very grubby indeed, which is a key problem. So all you do then, I'm just going to set this back out of the way and bring my lighter fluid into the shot with a cotton bud, and I'm just going to open this up and I'll put a little lighter fluid on the cotton bud and clean that com all the way up. Okay, and clean that com completely. Okay. So I'm just going to soak, oh, it's gone everywhere, It is nasty stuff, this is. I've used a little too much there because I'm not looking at what I'm doing. I'm looking at the camera a little more. But yeah, if you want to wear gloves while you use that, you can do, because it is quite nasty on the skin. But you know, for the purposes of the video, I'm not going to do that. So hold it in place once again. I'll just make sure this camera's focused. And then you just want to hold the comm somewhere and clean it up real good. Sometimes you won't be able to get all the mess off. You could use the Dremel, I suppose, to clean them properly, but I found that often doesn't matter too much. It's more the big pieces of debris that are going to cause you problems. But all the same, you do want the best conductivity possible from the commutator. And as you can see, my cotton bud is pretty dirty. And you want to make sure there's no debris inside the motor as well, if you can see in there. That's why I said to have the needle, because the needle is excellent for hooking around little pieces of debris and getting them out. So if there are any little hairs in there or something like that, you can get those out nice and easily. And you do need to make sure that there's nothing in between these gaps, which there normally isn't, so you know, not to worry. But if you do notice that they are pretty dirty in those gaps, you need to make sure that they're not. So again, the needle is quite useful for that. But either way, that seems to be pretty good now. That seems to be clean. Clean is the key, really. I'm just going to clean it up a little bit better off camera, but you get the idea. And then we'll start putting this thing back together. Okay? Okay, so first things first then is we put this plate back on. Now you're going to want to make sure it is nice and clean, as this one is, as you can see. Often this side especially gets very dirty and grubby. And again, you want to be careful with what you use. You don't want to eat the plastic away, but I do like to clean out the insides of these metal rings, because obviously that's where your brushes are going to sit. Alright, so we push these in exactly back where it came from, and then we're going to reposition the brushes where they came from originally, making sure that they are flat. If the brushes have worn irregularly, you can just file them so that they are flat, but you really want them to have as good a contact with the commutator as possible. So I'm going to stick that one in there now, and then you want to plop the spring in on top, oops, like that. And from this point onwards, you've got to be very careful not to dislodge that spring. It probably will happen, I'll say that right now, but you do want to try and make sure that it doesn't. So I'm just getting the piece of copper again, putting the screw in place, and then you just want to, like this, lower it down onto the whole assembly, and pushing the spring. I can't really show this too well, it is a fiddly bit, but you just want to get it so that the spring is compressed down, straight, not bent. Then you want to hold it down with one finger, and then with the other hand just, oops, not with that screwdriver, with this one, I'm falling apart here, screw that back in nicely, and tightly too. Alright, and then with a bit of luck, when you release it, that's going to be perfectly in place. Okay, the other brush then, which is still attached to the spring, you have to make sure the springs are nice and clean as well, by the way. Now these are, because they don't really get dirty once I've had them. But you want to make sure the springs aren't filthy and that they're nice and shiny. It can be very difficult to clean them because obviously they're so delicate, but you've just got to make sure that they're good and clean. And you can clean these up as well if you're noticing bad running, but as you can see, I've shined these up a little bit, which makes them run a bit better. So the same process again. I'll try and show this a little better. It should be easier actually from the other side. I'm just getting that screw ready. Okay, so I'm just going to lower this down then onto the spring, making sure the screw goes into the hole. I'm trying to do this as well as I can for the camera. Alright, so hopefully you saw that go over. I'm just going to hold that in now, and then with the other hand, as always, screw this in good and tight. Okay, and that's all ready. Now you're going to want to do the first bit of lubricating, which gets it all running smoothly. So again, secure the thing. Yep, you can see that. I put a couple of drops on this bearing here. Come on, come out. There we go. Just a little bit on there. And on the other side, you want to put a little bit behind this gear as well. There you go. Now what I like to do is, before I put all the gears and things back in, I like to let the motor have its own little run, just to make sure that it's working properly without any load whatsoever. So I'm going to go and fetch the power supply, and we'll get that going and see how that works. Okay, let's give it a shot. Okay, so all I'm going to do then is I'm going to hook it up to my train controller, or a spare train controller, but your main one will work just fine. You can buy yourself a little set of crocodile clips. I think I got about 10 of these for about £3 on eBay, so check it out, that's very useful. And all you really need to do is make contact anywhere on these two pieces, and if you're very careful not to bend them, you can just stick these crocodile clips straight onto here. Whoops. Power supply was already switched on there. I wasn't expecting it to turn on. Alright, now if these crocodile clips don't have a lot of tension in the clips, but if they are very, very strong and grippy ones, you're not going to want to clip them on there because they could bend. These ones are just fine, so I'm going to get on with it straight away. Let's apply a little power then. Of course, it's not going to go anywhere because it's not got its gears in, but let's turn that around if possible. And you can see there that that gear's turning nice and quick, nice and good. Now I have noticed there's a little hair there. Let me turn this up a little bit. There is a little bit of hair there, so I'm just going to grab it. There we go. I don't know where they keep coming from, but you just got to, keep an eye out for them. Okay, so that's had a good run. That's working very well. I'm just going to give it a good thrash just to make sure it really is as good as it can be. Yep, it's pretty good. And the other way. Okay, that's pretty happy, I think. Okay, so now we can start to add the gears back in. I'm just going to remove these croc clips. Okay, so presuming your gears are now nice and clean and ready to go, you can now begin to place them back onto the assembly. Now what I like to do first, with a little bit of lubricant here, is to choose the one you're going to put on first. Now you have to do the bottom ones first for obvious reasons. Place a little bit of lubricant onto there, onto that notch, and then stick the gear right back where it came from. There we go. Nice. I'll do the one on the opposite side as well. Now some of the motors are built slightly differently, and if you want to do the same with a Lima motor or something like that, they are actually very similar. So you could apply a lot of these tips to Lima motors and various other motors actually. It all works about the same. Obviously all the gears go in different ways, so you've got to either watch very carefully when you take them out so that you know exactly where they need to go, or you need to work it out later on. But either way, you've got to have a good idea about where everything goes. Okay, so that's all in there but loose. So if you remember this clip, that's obviously what has to go in next. Now these do get very grubby. This one's nice and clean, as you can see, but you do need to clean that up just in case it is nasty. Now to fit this back in, all you do is place this part here in the top, push it upwards like this, and then bring it down over the holes like that, which clips down. It is a little bit fiddly, but it's easier if you're not reaching around the camera, trust me, it's not as difficult as I've probably made it look. Okay, so what I like to do now then is turn this sideways so that you can see it quite well there, and you just need to lubricate some of those gears. So I'll put a little blob there, and on the other side, which you won't see too well, a piece on here, and on there. Now you don't want to use too much because if this starts to splash everywhere you're in trouble, but yeah, not too much, and of course you need a little bit on this gear. Alright, now I'm going to explain the next step, and this is a very, very crucial step. I don't know if this idea has ever been voiced before on YouTube, but I'm going to talk about it anyway. Basically, if we look at the design of this from the side, you can see those gears that we've just splashed oil onto are directly above the driving wheels on both sides, as you can see, with the rubber traction tyres. Now what happens is, if we put this back on the track now, and get it running round, these gears are going to turn round, they're going to splash a lot of that oil straight onto these traction tyres, which will firstly make your loco lose traction, it won't pull very much at all, and secondly it's going to cover your rails in oil so that no locos are going to run properly, or at least with any sufficient pulling power. So what I like to do is flip the whole assembly upside down, bring out the crocodile clips again, which I will do, and then we get it running. Slowly to begin with, but then we'll gradually build up some speed. And what this does is it just makes sure that all those droplets of oil that are going to come flying out, we'll do it now, when it's not on the tracks. And yep, all that oil is getting worked in nicely now. Still doing it at quite a low speed at the moment. I'll do it back the other way. Make sure it's all had a good thorough working in. And now once the motor's warmed up a little bit, you can start to give it more of a thrashing, as it were. Increase the speed a little bit, which I'll do now. There you go. And now you can take it for a walk because it's going to start jumping all over the place. Okay. And slightly in the opposite direction. Yep, it's definitely off. Stay still. Alright. And then we'll stop it so that you can see. Now if we look at the wheels, they are basically shining with grease. Which is exactly what we wanted, funnily enough, because now is the best time to do the wheel cleaning. Once you're sure that it's had a good run, you can start to do this, and basically what I tend to do is I clean the wheels first, then get it running again, and if there's no spots of oil back on the wheel, then we know she's ready to run. And you're going to need to keep repeating this process until there's no muck or grease appearing on the wheels. So I'll change the camera angle then, clean the wheels, show you how it's done, if you didn't know already, of course. And then we'll just keep repeating the process until the wheels remain clean, and then we'll get her running on the main railway, okay? Okay, so let's get the motor running, only quite slowly. That's the lowest speed my controller will allow. And get one of these clean cotton buds, wherever they are. Here we go. And do pretty much the same as before. You need to get a little bit of your cleaning fluid onto the cotton bud. There we go, if it doesn't go everywhere. And then just hold the chassis in place and give it a good clean. Like this. Now hopefully the traction tyres will be gripping onto the wheels. If not, I'd sometimes just apply a little blob of super glue onto the inside of them, which holds them in place very nicely. Otherwise you can just replace them, because these traction tyres do occasionally need replacing. Make sure there's no grease here. Okay, and of course don't forget to clean the other sides. Now unlike me, you're going to want to change this cotton bud pretty soon after it gets dirty like this. But just for the purposes of the video, I'm going to just do it like this, just so I'm not always changing things. Alright, and then using the other side of the cotton bud, dry them up. It just makes it easier to spot if the oil is reappearing. There we go, dry them all anyway. Alright, and then we'll crank it up again. Let's put that back in the shot. Crank it up again. And the other way. Let it run for a little while. And then we'll have a look. And yep, those wheels are pretty good and dry, so that means there's no more oil flying out. I'm just going to give one last go to these wheels, turning the traction tyre, just to make sure it is truly clean, because I do like clean traction tyres. And then we'll assemble this baby back together, and we'll put it on the railway, see how it gets on. Okay, so once that process is complete, and you're happy that the wheels are truly clean, you can think about putting the loco back together. So hopefully you still have this piece lying around. I know you can't see it too well at the moment. I'll seat this motor back in here like that. Make sure that it goes into the little nib. Let me make sure it's gone in. Okay, and then I just turn it onto its back like this, well, onto its side or whatever, and then push the whole assembly back in until it clicks, and that should now be secured back where it came from. And then it's quite easy really. I'm just going to flip this around so that you can see and zoom out a little tad. Then we bring the chassis of the loco back in. We will just shove it in over there like this, and then just bring it down until it clicks, and that is now back in place, of course. Alright, and then you need to plug in the various plugs back into where they came from. In this case it was just the one, which went there, I believe. And that is now ready to run. Now I'm going to tempt fate and stick the body back on now. But you probably shouldn't. You should probably just try it before you put the body on, because fate doesn't normally allow this to work properly first time. So I'll put the body on then, and I'll see you down on the railway to give it a quick try. Okay, so she's down on the rails then. Now, when you do try them out for the first time, you're going to want to do so very slowly. It's probably not entirely necessary, but I do like to start them off very slowly, just because I'm paranoid about the oil basically going onto the wheels. So it doesn't hurt to start them off slowly, and you'll find that they do run slowly, much better now that you've done it. Let's just show that to you. Little power. Certainly not bad at slow speeds. And that's what I do. I just give them a little bit of juice, get them crawling forwards and backwards nice and gently, and then just gradually increase the speed and let them go round now, just to let it have a good go. And as you can see there, she's running really very well indeed. She's going to start slowing down now. She's getting further away from the power supply, but as you'll see, she hasn't stopped, which is the main thing. And as you can see now, I've sped her up a little bit and she's running absolutely fantastically. So yeah, hopefully there are some, well, hopefully at the very least, some useful tips on how you can service the Ringfield motor and get it running nicely like this. I'm not going to thrash her yet, just in case, because I don't like having to clean the whole track just because I've made a mistake with the service. But yeah, like I say, if you've got your own way to do it that works better, that's fine as well. Of course, I'm not saying mine is the best way under the sun, but it's just my way and it works for me. And if you didn't know how to service these motors, hopefully you've got a better idea, at least now, of what you can do to make them run better, how to take them apart and reassemble them properly. And as you can see, this one's running very nicely. So yeah, if you enjoyed the video, please like it and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Hopefully it'll be worthwhile because I've got lots of various videos coming up. If you'd like to get more involved, you can check out the Facebook and Twitter pages, which are below right now, and also in the description, which you can click on. And they are facebook.com/samstrains and twitter.com/samstrains. And it would be great to hear from you or see you on there. So yeah, I'll get off then. Thank you very much for watching as always, and I'll see you with the next video. Alright, cheers everybody.